Are you seeing the same issues in terms of the talent retention in the private sector right now?
Listen, this is the biggest challenge that I have right now. Is we're growing our business, which is great, but finding the talent to support that growth is becoming more and more difficult. And so at first, people were just leaving the workforce because the pandemic freaked everybody out. Then it was like a war on talent in terms of like competition and like these crazy, bidding wars for people. And now it's just like people are really making choices about how much do they want to work, where do they want to work, who do they want to work for. And so I would say it's actually getting harder and harder to find people that 2 years ago, this wasn't the same. It wasn't the same pressure. And so, I want to make sure that I help create a culture at KPMG that keeps our people that are around, because I have like an amazing team. I work with an incredible healthcare consulting group, and every single one of those people that is in the practice is like so important, and they're great. And I don't want to have any of them leave. And at the same time, I'm trying to also keep, growing the practice. And so those two challenges are, I know it's just part of running a business, but it's really hard right now. It's really hard.
And then, for those people, those leaders who are looking to transition to the private sector, what are some of the biggest pros and cons you would say for yourself, having worked in both sectors? What are some of those questions you should be asking yourself to make that decision?
It's not for everybody. So, okay, let's start with when I was at the hospital. I mean, I worked really hard in both circumstances. And I wouldn't say one is easier than the other. And this is consulting, right? I can't speak for all private sector because there's lots in there. But compared to the work that I was doing when I was in the leadership role, my work right now is way less predictable in terms of, how much work at any one given point in time, how many clients I'm supporting at a point in time, right? And so it's kind of like it just goes up and down all the time. And so I'm okay with that because I love the project work and I love my clients. And so I really enjoy working with all of them, but it can mean that the work can be like a bit overwhelming at times because there's just so much stuff going on. And it's not because I have a deadline, it's their deadlines, right? So I have to work to meet their deadlines. Whereas in the hospital setting, I could kind of manage my schedule. I could manage the workload, right? I had control over that. And so it's a very different environment. Having said that, I love the project work. It's different every day. It is literally different every day. Even though I said they're the same problems, how you deal with them are very different because every client setting is very different. And it's project work, which I love. Operations, I was really, really appreciative of the opportunity to learn. It was not my first love. I'll just admit that right now. And look, operations today is really hard. Like there's cybersecurity breaches, there's IT outages, right? Like there's all kinds of things that can go really horrible. And so managing risk in a public sector environment is very difficult. There's a lot of moving parts. And so, I'm having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing now. And so people have to think about kind of what their work pace is like, what they're comfortable doing. Do they want to have something that's kind of set, or do they want something that's like different all the time, variety, right? And so it kind of depends on your own personality too and what you're looking for. I don't think there's one clear-cut answer for anybody, really, or for everybody, that is.
I'd agree. It's it's not for everyone, as you said, but if people like that challenge of that constant sort of growth and not knowing, what tomorrow's going to bring, even though the public sector is very similar, but I would say the pace is very different. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, the pace is totally different. The other difference too is that like we, as part of our work, like we get paid for really understanding what is new, what is innovative, what are leading practices around the world. Like that's part of my job now. That wasn't really part of my job before. I needed to kind of understand what was happening elsewhere, but I wasn't like graded on it, you know what I mean, as part of my performance. So I think for like that to me is super exciting, and that's what's really fun about being in the position I'm in now, because that's what I love to do. I love learning about what's happening elsewhere and bringing that back to Canada to figure out how we can improve the health system here. And the fact that that's part of my job description is pretty amazing.
Yeah. It's another incentive and it ties back to that innovation and the work that,
Exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And thinking about, the greatest challenge that you're currently facing, Lydia, is it in the HR space, keeping talent, or is it something else?
It is really around talent. It really is around talent. I think the other thing too, I'll just say personally, is that I really miss working with people in person. So, for those people who don't know me, like I'm pretty extroverted. I get my energy from being with other people. I really miss that exchange. And I'm excited because KPMG is finally opening its offices again, and we're going to start going back slowly. But I'm really looking forward to that. And that has probably been one of the toughest things for me to really get used to. I mean, do I like working in my sweats? 100%. But, but I mean, just sit behind, a Zoom call like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hours a day and not actually be able to just grab a coffee with somebody. Like I really miss the personal interaction. I really miss that. And for those people who do know me, they'll probably really know where I'm coming from. But that's probably been the hardest thing for me personally through this whole pandemic.
And speaking about that, how has it been for you yourself in terms of your mental health, the workload over the last 2 years?
Yeah, the workload's been brutal. It's been absolutely brutal. And I think that because there is no office to get up and go to and come home from, the workday has just expanded to be like, for a while, every workday was honestly between 12 and 16 hours a day. Like that was to the point of ridiculousness. I think it's ratcheted back only because I've personally had to set more boundaries, but I also have to help my teams not kill themselves, right? And so because the work will fill the light in the room, right? As long as there's light in there, well, not even. I just feel like the expectation of being on all the time, all day long it's sort of changed, right? Like over the last 2 years. And so I have a calendar that's public so people can see it, and I'm internally public, but there isn't a single day that isn't almost 100% from like 8 a.m. until 7 o'clock at night that it isn't completely scheduled. And I have to purposely block times in my calendar so people don't just throw meetings in there. So I can actually like have lunch or, take a walk or do something.
Yeah. Do you block thinking time or, time for yourself at all?
I block every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I block time off in the morning for me to be able to work out because that is what I have personally found for me, I really need. So whether I'm like, it usually means I'm working out in my apartment, or I'll go out for a walk or something. But generally that's the time I block off for myself. I try to block off time for lunch. That doesn't always happen. And so I've gotten really good at eating during meetings off camera. And in terms of thinking time, I mean, one of the things that I have, again, it's part of my job. I'm part of I'm part of KPMG's global healthcare network, and I co-lead our digital transformation methods for healthcare. And so part of that is engaging with people who do what I do, but around the world. And we have regular touch points, so I can actually hear what they're working on. And that's actually, it's not thinking time so much as like learning time for me. And part of the reason why I really enjoy being part of that network is because I'm learning through the process.
And it's so amazing, you learn so much from others and what they're doing.
Yeah. And HIMSS was another great example of that. Like I did get, time away to be able to go. It was the first business trip that I was able to do out of the country since the pandemic. And just like the amazing amount of things to learn in 1 week is kind of mind-blowing. And so not only did I get to see a lot of really cool stuff in the exhibit hall, but listen to some really interesting presentations, and I got to interact with a lot of my colleagues that I hadn't seen in 2 years from around the world. So that was pretty special.